Hi and welcome to Jessie James Beads. I'd like to introduce you to Coquette Soirée, our newest and most enchanting bead collection, with dreamy pastels, delicate florals, vintage romance and timeless elegance. Just a handful of items to show you here. I've got this fantastic strand with beautiful rosy glass composite beads, feminine bows, sweet, playful, charming designs automatically spring to mind. We have got some gorgeous pearl designs ready and waiting to be made with these little beauties. Absolutely divine pastel colour combinations. It's charming and it's flirtily fun. These little multi-hole beads look absolutely superb. We've also got some composite beads. Have a look at the colour on this one. It's absolutely stunning. Butterflies and flowers. These are entirely dreamy. How beautiful are they? More composite beads. These are an outstanding work of art. So much attention to detail. The bead mix I'm going to be working with today is this little beauty. What an absolute array we have here to work with. Now I'm going to be adding in some 18 gauge and 26 gauge wire. I've chosen to work in tarnish resistant brass today. Let's make a necklace together which will have that whole Coquette Soirée vibe. Our focal part of the design today is going to be this lovely composite bead from the Big Bead Mix. There's lots to work with in here and we'll use the remainder of these beads to create a beautiful necklace to accompany our central piece. Really pretty. It kind of looks like rhinestone with an opal design in the centre there. Really gorgeous. I've got two 6-inch lengths of wire. Now this is tarnish resistant brass, which is quite a firm wire, but a medium copper core wire will be fine. I've gone for brass because I think the colour matches really well with these gorgeous beads. I'm also going to be using a 26 gauge wire, also in tarnish resistant brass, and what I've done is I've clipped the end but popped the rest of my reel inside one of these little plastic bags. It helps to stop the wire from going crazy when you're unspooling a little bit at a time. So what we're going to do is to use a round form to create a nice arcing shape down in the centre of this wire. Now as I mentioned, this is quite a firm wire, so if you are working with a hard wire, do make sure that you warm through the central third of both of those wires. I'm going to grab in one of my round wooden mandrels. I'm going to choose one which is just slightly smaller than the size of the bead we're working with, and I'm just going to push both of those wires around to get a nice arcing shape. Now the reason I've gone for a mandrel that is slightly smaller is because these wires are very firm and they will just spring out slightly. Now don't worry overly about what the ends are doing right now. We'll be doing something else with those in a little while. What we will want to do is drop one of those wires down and then take the other wire and just open it out ever so slightly larger. Now if you don't have a wooden mandrel, you can achieve the same thing with a tapered ring stick. You can even just sort of open out that shape ever so slightly on a wooden ring stick as well. So we're looking for one to be just ever so slightly larger than the other. And what we're going to do is to weave around both of these and create a little bit of a pattern to just draw around the outside of that beautiful bead. So let's grab hold of one of those wires. I'm going to go for whichever one comes to my hand first, and I'm going to wrap the tail end of my wire 3 times around this heavier piece. Now again, because the tarnish resistant brass is a little bit firmer than the copper wire that I usually work with, I will allow myself to just trim a little bit of a tail away so that I don't struggle to get that end section to sit down flush against that core heavy wire. I do want to make sure that that's nice and smooth and that each end of that little coil of wire is compressed so we get a nice neat little coil of wires there. We're going to bring in the second wire now and let's see if this is the smaller one or the larger one. So that's slightly smaller. Let's pop those pliers down. What we're going to do is to choose our weave today. Now I think what I'm going to do is a 3 and 1 weave. So I've got the cut end coming away towards the cut end, And I've got 3 wraps around the larger or the outside wire. And what I'm going to do now is to wrap once around both of those wires. Allow the inside one to just kick up slightly. You can support it with your fingernail if you wish. Bring the tail of wire up between them, and then I'm going to wrap 3 times around that outer wire again. So that's 2, 3 times. Every time you complete a little section, make sure that you get that nice and tight. If you care about your nails at all, you can use a set of pliers just to bring that down so that you get that nice neat coiling effect. And then we're going to wrap around both of those wires 1 time. Now you can of course go for whatever pattern you desire. I'm just going for 3 and 1 because it looks attractive and it's very, very easy to achieve. So make sure that's turned in the light so you can see exactly what's happening. So this time we're going to bring the wire up between those 2 and wrap 3 times around just the outer or the larger of those 2 wires. I'm going to use my thumbnail to push that down. Now we've got those 3 wraps, so let's push that coil down neatly. Bring the tail up inside both of those heavy wires so that we can wrap 1 time around both of them. Now what I'm looking to do is to create a horseshoe shape around which this can sit around the outside of that bead. Okay, so maybe what we need to do is just open that out ever so slightly. Once you've warmed the wire through before you begin working, it's really helpful to do that. And what I'm looking to achieve is for the drill hole in the bead to be at the point where that weaving starts. So you may, when you've just done the first couple of wraps, be able to just move that slightly up or slightly down. And you can still work with this wire, even though it's a firm wire, just to get that to sit exactly where you want it to. So that looks like it's going to be quite a nice little highlighting drop down beneath that large central focal bead. So I'm going to continue wrapping in exactly the same way until I get to the other side. Once I've completed enough weaving to sit from the hole to the hole underneath that beautiful large focal bead, what I'm going to do is trim both of the wires on either end to around about 1/4 inch. This sort of size of wire is always useful, so keep hold of that in your scrap pot for making spirals and charms. You could use your round pliers or your memory wire finishing pliers, as I am right now. So I'm looking at the back of my weave. One of the beauties of the 3 and 1 weave is that it's the same on both sides, but I've designated this to be the rear of the design, and what I'm going to do is use the smaller side of my memory wire finishing pliers to turn a small loop on the back of the design 1 wire at a time. So if I just turn that over gently and get that wire to sit down against the weave like so. And then I'll do exactly the same thing on the other wire. So just need to work out which side the pliers have got to go and just rotate that round in small movements until that wire tucks away behind that weave really nicely. Now if it's slightly shorter on one side than the other, then the weave is a little bit mobile and you can just push that until it sits perfectly. So if you need to refine the shape slightly so that it sits more perfectly, you absolutely can. Just take your time and get that to mould exactly how you want it to around the outside of that large focal composite bead. Once you're happy that your loops are sitting equally and they sit outside of the drill holes on that composite bead, what we're going to do is to start by threading the bead through the first 2 holes on one side, then all the way through the centre of that beautiful bead. This is always my worst aspect, is getting beads onto threads. All the way through the centre there, and then you can retract that just a little bit and make sure that it pushes through the 2 loops on the far side so that you've got that set in the centre of your necklace design. That's the crux of the focal part of today's design. What I'm going to do now is to add beads on either side and build up a complete necklace. I've threaded the entire collection onto my piece of beading wire. All that remains now is for me to add some crimps and covers and my chosen clasp at the end. I'll take a photograph and leave that on the outro screen for you to take a look at the bead order. I still can't decide which my favourite bead is from this collection. I love the almost moonstone-like effect over these heart beads, but I really adore these gorgeous bees. How adorable are they? And I really do think that that tarnish resistant brass wire is the right choice. You could work with copper or gold, or just go for it and mix your metals. Entirely up to you. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here at Jessie James Beads. I look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now.